Shifting focus now to Pakistan, where if you blaspheme, you die. On Sunday, one woman narrowly escaped death. She was saved, all thanks to the swift action of a female police officer who risked her own life in order to rescue the female citizen. Her name is ASP Saida Sherbano Naqvi. She is the sole reason that the innocent woman was saved. Here's what happened. It all started on Sunday. At around 1:10 p.m. local time, the Lahore police received a distress call from a restaurant. A woman and her husband, who came to the city to do some shopping, had been surrounded by a bloodthirsty mob. Why? Because this group of fanatics misinterpreted the Arabic print on the woman's kurta as verses from the Holy Quran. By the time the police reached the eatery, around 300 people had gathered. They were shouting out threats and hurling abuses at her. The mob wanted her to remove her kurta. In some of the videos circulated online, the mob can be heard chanting, "Those who blaspheme must be beheaded." They had the woman surrounded from all sides. You can see from these videos just how scared, nervous she looks. She is sitting in the far corner of the restaurant, trying to shield her face with her hands. Another video showed how the officers had formed a barrier around her, protecting her from the increasingly charged crowd. That's when the courageous woman officer comes to her rescue. The footage shows the officer standing at the entrance, trying to restore order. Eventually, she is able to save the woman from the crowd. How? By covering the woman with a black robe and headscarf. She can be seen pushing the woman through the crowd as other police officers form a chain to clear their path. Once she was brought to the police station, religious scholars confirmed that the text on her dress was Arabic calligraphy, not verses from the Quran. If you are not shocked enough, let me tell you what the calligraphy on her dress means. It means sweet in Arabic. Yes, you heard that right. This woman was this close to being lynched over something so basic, so mundane. Following the incident, the woman even issued a heartfelt apology. She expressed regret. She says she bought the kurta because she liked the design. For reference, the dress, as posted by the brand on their Instagram page, that's the dress for you. Issuing the apology, the woman said she had no intention of disrespecting the Quran. But here's the thing. She did not. She just wore a dress because she liked it. On what seemed like a normal Sunday, before stepping out of the house to run errands, she did what millions of women around the world do: pick a dress to wear that day because they like it. Why then did she have to go through what she did? Why did a decision as mundane as picking an outfit almost get her killed? That's the reality of Pakistan. Every street, every mohalla or neighborhood has those who use the blasphemy laws as a weapon. According to the law, the minimum punishment for those who blaspheme is 10 years in jail, along with a fine of 1 million rupees. Not to mention, it also carries a potential death sentence for anyone who insults Islam and its founder, Prophet Muhammad. What's more, it is a non-bailable offense. For long, human rights activists have raised alarm about this. Activists have expressed concern that these laws may be used to settle scores and further persecute the religious minorities. And Pakistan does have a record of these laws being misused. In the last decade, the offences committed by those accused of blasphemy have been as absurd as spelling errors, a post on Facebook, a rural water dispute, throwing a business card into rubbish, so on and so forth. And if these cases shocked you, here's more. In August last year, scores of churches and homes were burnt in Jaranwala after two men from the city were accused of damaging the Quran. What's more troubling is that such cases are increasingly being settled outside court with violence by mobs. I mean, this is a country where even the slightest suggestion of blasphemy can lead to death. That's the price one has to pay to live in this country. Since 1990, at least 85 people have reportedly been murdered because of alleged blasphemy allegations. Even judges hearing blasphemy cases have reported facing pressure to hand down convictions regardless of the evidence. They fear physical violence if they don't. And the same goes for the police. When anti-blasphemy violence breaks out, cops have been seen standing aside, allowing the mobs to carry out their attacks. They fear that they too might be branded blasphemers if they don't allow the lynching. Which brings me back to the incident that unfolded on Sunday in Lahore. ASP Saida Shehrbano Naqvi stands apart. She is being hailed as a hero, as she should. She risked her own life to defuse a horrific situation. She tried to reason with a bloodthirsty mob. She carefully escorted the woman to a safer place, averting a tragedy and rightfully earning the applause of many. Now, Pakistan's Punjab Police has recommended her name for the prestigious Quaid-e-Azam Police Medal, which is the highest gallantry award for law enforcement in Pakistan. Let's now talk about what's happening in South Korea. Now, if you have been following the developments, you would know by now about the doctors' strike there. Basically, thousands of medical interns and residents have stayed off the job since early last week, 9,000 to be precise. And why is that? To mark their protest against a government plan. What's the plan? To increase medical school admissions by about 65%. Why? According to the government, adding more doctors is required to deal with South Korea's rapidly aging population. Basically, the authorities say more staff is the need of the hour to increase healthcare services in the remote areas and also meet the growing demands of one of the world's most rapidly aging societies. By the way, just for context here, the country's current doctor-to-patient ratio is among the lowest in the developed world. And why are those on strike against the plan? Because they say universities cannot handle so many new students. They argue that the plan would not resolve a chronic shortage of doctors in some key but low-paying areas like pediatrics and emergency departments. Striking doctors have said they worry doctors faced with increased competition would engage in overtreatment, burdening public medical expenses. The young doctors want that their pay and working conditions should be the priority rather than the government's plan to boost the number of physicians. Meanwhile, the walkouts have severely impacted the operations of hospitals. There have been numerous cancellations of surgeries and other treatments. And now, the government has given junior doctors 4 days to end their walkouts, or they could face prosecution or have their medical licenses suspended. That's right. The Vice Health Minister has said that the government will not seek any disciplinary action against the striking doctors if they return to work by Thursday. That is by the end of this month, the 29th of February. And if they return to the hospitals they had left by then, they will not be held responsible for any damages caused by their walkouts. Adding that those who don't meet the deadline will be punished with a minimum 3-month suspension of their medical licenses and face further legal steps like investigations and possible indictments. Under South Korea's medical law, the government can issue back-to-work orders to doctors and other medical personnel when it sees grave risks to public health. Now, here's the thing. Doctors are considered essential workers in South Korea and are restricted by law from striking. Of course, that is understandable. Not allowing essential workers to be on strike would be the practical thing to do, right? Because they serve as the backbone of a country's functioning and are the providers of essential services. Which in turn begs the question, what should they do if they have to make their voice heard? Not allowing them to not be at work is fine, but what can they possibly do to register their protest if they have demands, if they are unhappy or want the government to sit up and take note? By not allowing them to be on strike, do these essential workers end up being vulnerable because they are not allowed to go on strikes in order to mark their protest or demand what they want? Or should they be allowed to be on strike at the cost of the way in which their absence from work would impact the people, those who depend on their services? Or should things just not be allowed to reach a point where they feel like their voice is not heard, to the extent that they feel the need to not go into work in order to make their voice heard? What do you think about this? Write to us and let us know. Spring is about to end. We're staring at long summer months ahead. In the northern hemisphere of the world, at least, and it's not just us who are going to feel the heat, it's also the big tech. Turns out it's always thirsty. And with artificial intelligence in picture, no amount of water will be enough to quench that thirst. With millions of users hooked to the internet, tech giants Microsoft, Google and Meta have raised their water consumption quite significantly, in fact. I have the figures, but before I tell you about them, why do these companies need so much water? What is the use exactly, you ask? Well, it's to cool down their data centers. Generative AI runs on large language models, and these models generate huge amounts of data. They need a lot of computer power to operate. Because of this, the systems keep heating up and need to be cooled down. And how is that done? Using chilled water. The water absorbs heat from the air in the server farms and keeps the equipment cool. Only a part of it can be reused. Most of it evaporates. So you see, it is a huge waste. And with most of the big players launching AI products, their water consumption is skyrocketing. Let's get to the figures now. The latest we have is from 2022. Microsoft increased its water consumption by 34%. Google by 22%, Meta by 3%. And how much is that in liters? Microsoft used 22 billion liters of water, Google nearly 7 billion liters, Meta roughly 2 billion liters of water. Yes, we are talking about billions of liters of water. The big tech is drinking up all that as several parts of the world remain plagued by droughts and dry spells. When Google and Microsoft prepared their Bard and Bing chatbots, both had major spikes in water usage. A month before OpenAI finished training GPT-4, its most advanced model, a data center cluster in Iowa consumed 6% of the district's water. It was so bad that the residents filed a lawsuit. The details of the model's energy consumption are not available, but when they will be, if ever, OpenAI will have to answer tough questions. Consider ChatGPT. It is run on an older model, GPT-3. Experts say when a user requests between 10 and 50 responses, it's equal to drinking half a liter of water. Now, imagine the number of users around the world and the number of questions they ask. They are basically drinking away liters and liters of water. And this is just GPT-3 that we are talking about. GPT-4 consumes even more power and water. These AI systems are draining away water reserves. If experts and analysts are to be believed, AI demand would drive up water withdrawal to between 4.2 trillion and 6.6 trillion litres by 2027. That is half the amount consumed by the UK each year. Where would all this water come from? And the question is this even sustainable? Doesn't seem like it. Last month, in fact, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman finally admitted that the AI industry is heading for an energy crisis. At the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, Altman warned that the next wave of AI systems will consume much more power than expected. Energy systems are bound to struggle to cope, and so will our water reserves. This AI is not only eating up our jobs, it's also drying up our wells. Tech giants, you see, have targets to put more water back into systems than they consume by 2030. And it's well and good on paper, but how serious or practical are these goals? And will anyone hold them to account? Researchers have called for more comprehensive data and transparency from AI firms. They have asked for a breakdown of how much water different computing services consume. Google declined to comment. Microsoft did not give a straight answer. If it's any compensation, at least some lawmakers are taking notice. Earlier in the month, U.S. Democrats introduced the Artificial Intelligence Environmental Impacts Act of 2024. The bill has called to put in place some standards and assess AI's impact on the environment. It has also called for a framework in which AI developers can willingly maintain transparency. Now, whether this legislation will pass remains uncertain, but is this enough? Will tech firms ever own up to their water footprint? Imagine how much more water these tech giants would have drained by the time this bill passes or there is some scrutiny. Can we afford this amid a climate crisis?